Welcome to our second annual Founders Day Symposium. We've titled it Black Men in the 21st Century, Myths, Data, and Reality. And we have a great panel lined up. Unfortunately, a couple of our presenters were snowed in, as you all know, with the storm on the Mid-Atlantic and New England. And we'll have to give these guys a pat on the back for being a trooper. But before we get started, I want to introduce our president, and he'll set the occasion for you. And David Wall Rice, our psychology professor, will be moderating and discussing for the rest of the afternoon. As you all know, our president is a dynamic speaker. He's the Reverend Dr. Robert Michael Franklin, the 10th president of Morehouse College. He is truly an intellectual. He is the author of multiple books, having been educated at Morehouse College, getting the BA in 75, the MDiv, Master of Divinity in 78 from Harvard Divinity School, and received his PhD from University of Chicago in 1985. He has served as a foundation officer for the Ford Foundation, where he was over a multi-million-dollar portfolio. In addition to that, he has served as president of ITC, our seminary here, as you all know. And also, he was a distinguished scholar in resident at Emory University prior to coming to Morehouse. But I would say that working with individuals, working with youth, and he would probably tell you this too, is one of his main things, and his 3 kids would tell you that also. And also his wife, who is Dr. Cheryl Franklin, an OBGYN here in the city. Together they've done countless hours working with youth and young people and trying to keep the dialogue going. So I won't go into reading the rest of this. I will give you the 10th president of Morehouse College, Dr. Robert M. Franklin.
Thank you, Professor Clayton, and welcome to Morehouse College. Welcome to the Atlanta University Center. It's our great pleasure to welcome you here for this Symposium and Research Summit as we focus on pressing topics that pertain to the current state and the future of African American men, relationships in African American communities, the future of our families, and our health in general. I'd also like to thank all of our alums who have returned, and you should know that many are viewing at this time via live web stream. And so I do ask those of you in this listening live audience to silence your phones, your devices, your fax machines, or whatever you might be carrying today, and help us to support a quality program. You've come to a special place. I like to remind the world that out of the over 4,000 colleges and universities in the United States, there's only one that is custom made for the education of African American men, African American male leaders, and you are here in the campus of Morehouse College. We've produced a Nobel Peace Prize winner, Olympic gold medalists, and Rhodes Scholars. But today we ask, what is next for Morehouse? I'd like to thank you all for being a part of this deliberative discernment process as we seek to understand the unique calling and mission of an institution like Morehouse for the future of black boys and black men, and more broadly for the African American community and the global diaspora. Today we convene then not simply to share information, but also to listen, and to listen with open minds, and to listen with a critical ear, with attention to what will be said, both by our expert panelists, each of them a distinguished leader, scholar, public activist in his or her own right, but also by those of you who choose to join in the conversation as we proceed. We are listening, and we want to learn and modify behavior based on what we learn. As a college community, we are especially interested, under the leadership of Dr. Obie Clayton, who directs our Morehouse Research Institute, interested in such issues as the disparities in black male educational achievement and black male college attendance and graduation rates. We're very interested in the tensions, the complications, the misunderstandings, and the misbehavior between black men and women. We are interested in the tensions, complications, phobias, fears, and misconduct between some segments of the black, straight, and gay communities. We are interested in health disparities between African American communities and other communities. We are interested in the impact of the economy on black wealth accumulation and loss in the past 24 months. And we're interested and intrigued by the role of policy, the role of government, the role of not-for-profit organizations, the role of leadership, the role of faith, and even the role of President Obama in this particular milieu as we deliberate about the future of our people. And so we look forward to this conversation. The college is grateful for our own Dr. David Wall Rice, for his leadership. He's a professor and a prolific researcher, sought-after commentator, and an acclaimed author. He's largely responsible for assembling the panel of speakers for today, and he serves as the moderator for this panel, and he'll come momentarily. I'd also like to thank, again, Dr. Obie Clayton for his tireless efforts in moving this program to reality, and my own Chief of Staff, Fran Phillips Calhoun, who works tirelessly in this and many other arenas. Today we are fortunate to have a renowned panel for our conversation. They'll be introduced, and so I will not belabor, but I simply would like to say thank you to Dr. Michael Stramler, Dr. Horace Griffin, Dr. Leroy Lewis, all three of them, by the way, Morehouse alums, and to Dr. Shani Harris-Peterson, a colleague from Spelman, who joins us in lieu of one of our beloved colleagues who was snowed in on the East Coast. So thank you, Dr. Peterson, for taking time out of your busy schedule, and we're very appreciative of your leadership and your work in film and African American social criticism. Each of these experts is especially equipped to help inform, again, this critical, deliberative, and discernment process that Morehouse College is engaged in. For ultimately, this is not a detached conversation, but one that informs the fundamental metaphor that I have used to define my administration at Morehouse, that we are engaged in a renaissance, a period of renewal and rebirth that looks backward, as the Sankofa bird does, to reach back and critically bring forward traditions and practices of yesterday that made us the rich people that we were. And at the same time, Sankofa is looking forward and moving forward as we seek to address a new horizon, a new future that none of us have seen before. And as I said to the freshmen yesterday as we conferred these wonderful maroon blazers that Professor Rice so smartly adorns today, that this is simply an emblem of Morehouse College's call to every student to be committed to service, to leadership, and doing that in a spirit of humility. Let me note finally that for the first time, this conversation today will be streamed live on the college's website, as I noted, but also our friends who have a Twitter account can join the conversation via Twitter at Morehouse News. So Twitter at Morehouse News. And this is the college's first Twitter chat. And I'm not ashamed to admit that just yesterday I signed up for my Twitter account. So I'm ready, and my director of communications said, Dr. Franklin, we want you to Twitter during this conversation. So I will be in the audience, and I will be engaging. I'm not even sure what's going on here, okay? I'll have a different story in 6 months, but I'm 1 day old in the Twitter universe. So we'll see what happens, and I'll try to be very careful about which buttons I press. Again, welcome to Morehouse. We look forward to an engaging, stimulating conversation, and one that will, like all good lectures and sermons, upset the equilibrium. of every listener here. A good message upsets the equilibrium, the sense of comfort, the sense of I'm comfortable with the norms and the status quo. Every good, powerful idea, message, proclamation, photograph, piece of music, piece of art upsets the equilibrium of its audience. I have no doubt that that will happen here today. Let me finally just mention and introduce the new provost of Morehouse College who joins us. He's just been here for 1 month, and I'm glad he's still here. Dr. Weldon Jackson. Would you stand, Weldon? With that, Dr. David Wall Rice.
Thank you, President Franklin. We appreciate the occasion as well as the opportunity to speak in front of you all today. We do want to make sure that we are upsetting the equilibrium and that we are complicating the dialogue that we're going to have. Firstly, just kind of going through some general protocol. You'll note that, as President Franklin mentioned, there are some folks who aren't here with us today, though they tried their best. Imani Perry, who's a professor of Africana Studies from Princeton University, called late last night and said that she was going to be unable to attend, but looks forward to coming to Morehouse in the near future to share her genius. And of course, a beloved friend of the college, Professor Kamar Jules P. Harrell, also said that he really wanted to be here. He actually is in Washington, D.C. He said he was going to drive to Richmond, fly out from there, but the earliest flight that he was able to get was 2:30. So we want to thank their efforts and their belief in this program. And also, you'll note that we have a tremendous panel here. But also, I want to make sure that I thank my good friend and colleague, Dr. Shawnee Harris-Peterson, who is actually pitch hitting for two people. So we'll lean on her brilliance in both film and in media, and also her training as a clinical psychologist as well. Now, she is going to dip out of here quickly and then come back because she actually does have some responsibilities over at Spelman, but she's going to be here to lecture on the second half of our dialogue today. All right, so I just wanted to give her the opportunity to I know she said she had to leave in a couple of minutes, so I wanted to make sure folks weren't like, hey, what's she doing, right? There's no snow there. It's a tremendous honor to not only be here today, but to be up here with these tremendous scholars and intellectuals. And not only that, but activists in their own way. The tremendous thing about these Morehouse brothers, the super young ones like LaRue, and the middle of the road ones like myself, and then the super old ones like Father Griffin, is that they are really committed to the institution, and they're committed to the goals that the institution has had as central for its entire existence. And that is developing leadership, developing strong black men, and looking at how we are contributing to the larger corpus of society, not only nationally, but globally. So it's a tremendous honor that they are here with us today. I'm going to introduce them separately, but what I wanted to do just a little bit was to kind of introduce the topic a little bit more. And so we're going to talk a little bit about research and kind of where we are in terms of how we're engaging black males right now. So what we have up here are the lights down enough? Can you all see okay? You all can see okay? Okay, great. Down a little more? Okay. And also, just an aside, if you go to Morehouse College and you have a hat on, if you could just take that off right now, I'd appreciate that. Thank you very kindly. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and we'll get the lights down just a little bit. But black men in the 21st century, myths, data, and reality. And this is just a bit of an introduction. Again, I'm in the psychology department here at Morehouse College, and one of my strands of research is looking at the affirmative development of black males. So first, I always like to look at these two things, and you'll have to excuse me, I can't see on my screen right now. You can't see me. That's hip-hop lingua franca circa 1993. I think it was around then. If it was earlier, Father Griffin can help us out. But you can't see me. What does that mean? Thinking about you can't see me. Does it mean that I'm too hype for you to see? Does it mean I'm too complicated for you to see? Does it mean that you don't have the faculties for me to be able to be seen? Or does it mean simply that I am invisible to you? Am I invisible to you? In the sense of the great Ralph Ellison, do you see only my phenotypic expression? and nothing else. Let's think about that. We also have the stone deaf do not listen, for there are no sounds for them to hear, but men who can listen perfectly are nevertheless likely to hear with effectiveness only words and sentences which seem to them to have relevance and meaning. A message may be lost for at least two reasons: because it is expressed in a code too hard to decipher, or because it appears to have no significance that is worthwhile. And this is Neblet who's talking about Kierkegaard. At least two reasons that we don't hear folk: because it's expressed in a code too hard to decipher, or because it appears to have no significance that is worthwhile. I think those are two things that we want to make sure that we're attending to when we're concerning ourselves with black men. And I say black men and black boys because so many times when we begin to talk about black men, we interject black males. That sounds a little bit more clinical and a little bit more safe. But when you're talking about black men, that adds a whole different dynamic to it. And why is it that we can't see them? Why is it that we refuse to see them? Is it because we don't understand where they're coming from? Or is there a code that's just too sophisticated or too laborsome for us to engage in? Let's think about that a little bit. And then come experience life as we know it, as some of you should know it. And this, of course, LaRue, you know, is the great Sean Carter from Reasonable Doubt, also known as Jay-Z. There's an invitation in the most conspicuous expression of black maleness and masculinity that we know within the globe today through hip-hop culture for individuals to see who black males are. But too often we refuse to see them. So hopefully today, well, not hopefully, what we will do today is we'll engage many different segments of black maleness, and we'll begin to unpack and complicate what it is that we're looking at when we're considering black men. So what we want to do, what I'm going to do briefly here, and it will be brief, is we want to get to know. How do we get to know? Who are black males? That's something we want to consider. We want to complicate the black male, as I said. We want to look at this idea of interpretational analysis and context matters. We want to look at agency. What are black males doing? We're not just waifs in the wind, right? We're not just resilient. We're also defiant. We're not just able to overcome, but we use the obstacles that are in front of us to be able to propel ourselves forward. That agency and field becomes important. And looking at issues of adaptation and balance. So I pose this to the audience, and just scream out, if you would, respectfully. Scream maybe not the word I want to use, but comment respectfully. Who are black males? Who are they? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Who are black males? Powerful, good. Athletic, good. That's a good one. Give me some more. Sons, good. Intellectuals, good. What else? Resilient, okay, good. What else? President, that's a good one. What else? You can tell we're at Morehouse College. This isn't going to work the way I want it to. Courageous, very good. Expressive, very good. Brilliant, brilliant. Angry, good. Any more? Okay, thank you, Dr. Cormier. Okay, descendants of enslaved people. What else? Gods, okay, 5% nation. Disproportionately incarcerated, great. Complacent, there we go. What else? Baby daddies, do we have anything like that? Let me stop there. I think that what happens so many times, and as I said, we really can tell that we're in a heightened, engaged space when we're thinking about black males, but what oftentimes happens when we're talking about black males is we talk about them in terms of being in jail. We talk about them in terms of lower achievement. We talk about them in terms of being defiant or oppositional to societal norms. What we oftentimes do is we mistake who they are by understanding their experience only and replacing their experience for who they are, right? So what happens is we understand these myths of who black males are, all right? So we have to look at how we learn and engage with respect to research. Typically, when we talk about research, we understand things from a distance. We understand things from a remove, right? Post-positivism. Post-positivism looks at reinforcing theory. What are things that we already know that hasn't been disproven about things, right? That's the lens that we almost singularly look at when we're evaluating anything, black males included. But what becomes important for us to acknowledge is that there are different sets of assumptions that we have to utilize in order to be able to have a full picture of not only who black males are, but who people are, right? So we have a constructivist knowledge claim or perspective, meaning that we're developing ideas. Who are these individuals? Okay, great, we have theory that exists, but how can we extend beyond theory? What are untapped things that we should know about black males? And how do we get at it? We have advocacy participatory perspective. If we know as researchers that there is a disproportionate number of black males in jail than in college, right? And I know Mike Stramler can talk about that because he broke something down for the Baltimore Sun, I think it was. Is that right? I did my research. Come on, man. We're not just friends. I know who you are, right? If we know that that is an issue for us, then what we have to do is say, okay, how can we change that? How can we engage? How do we look at best practices so that's no longer the case? Certainly, that's a responsibility of ours as responsible participants in the Morehouse College community. Be us Morehouse College students, be us faculty, be us sisters at Spelman, Clark, or community members. It's our responsibility to make sure that if there's something wrong, we push to make it right. That's part of what this dialogue here today is going to confront. And then there's a pragmatic lens that we have to operate from. What works, right? What works? When you think about who black males are, again, we typically look at us through post-positivist lenses. Well, if we do that, we see that we're pathological and deficit-oriented. That's just how we're defined, right? If we just look through the theories within the social sciences and within the media of how black males are, Morehouse College is not at the top of the list, right? It's pathology and deficit. So if we know that that's how people are viewing us, we've got to look at innovative ways in which we perform and facilitate and extend research, right? Very important to do. All right, so those are just some alternative knowledge claims. Now, this is brilliant. This is one of my professors who has since passed. W. Curtis Banks says, one of the most enduring legacies of any society is its structure of myths. These myths usually romanticize through simplification and exaggeration key dimensions of historical experience, along with the principles, values, and moral implications that derive from them. Powerful myths have remarkable endurance, evolving in narrative form along with society's technical changes while retaining the original substance of their central lessons. Right? That's some deep stuff, man. There are myths that exist about black males. There are stereotypes that exist about black males. And that's how we operate. We operate based on those myths, with the extension of technology, right? With the expression of misplaced black male authenticity across mediascapes. We understand black males based on not who they are, but on stereotypes of them and myths about them. It's important for us to understand that because so many times we begin to get in these extended dialogues and discussions based on weak ground that's not solid, right? Not terra firma. I was trying to think of the opposite of terra firma. I couldn't think of it real quick. So who are black males? Well, media, as I said, gives us a sense of an altered or sensational reality, right? Myth or stereotype. Social science research, which is similar to the media, in that there's an incomplete picture of who black males are. And these two work in cycles with one another, right? The social science literature reinforces the media reinforces the social science literature, and we haven't broken the cycle, right? If we can say, and I know, President Franklin, that you had a tremendous, I was so blown away. President Franklin told me that he talked to this cat that I'm getting ready to reference. But if we know that we can define black males by the stereotype of 50 Cent, then we've done something wrong. 50, excuse me, Father, 50 Cent, right? But the thing is, the way that we get to know who black males are, even 50 Cent, Curtis Jackson, is we engage them, right? We have to engage ourselves. We can't just objectify. We can't just look at from a distance, because we have a responsibility to be engaged, right? That doesn't mean that we adulterate our science. It doesn't mean that we don't look at our science through objective lenses, but it also means that we can't afford to objectify not our subjects, but the people that we're doing research with. We're doing research with ourselves, right? So we can't afford to distance ourselves from ourselves. When we become participants in the academy, so many times, I was going to say something, Father Griffin, but we still have time to talk later. So many times what we do is we separate ourselves. Oh, we're at Princeton, right? We separate ourselves. Oh, we're at Yale. We separate ourselves. We're at Berkeley. We separate ourselves. CUNY. I'm over at Spelman, right? The thing that we have to value is the investment that we have the responsibility to have in our communities, and we need to respect the type of investment that these brothers and sister who just left and who's going to come back, like I said, have invested here today. We have cats at Berkeley. We have folks who are at Yale. We have folks who are at CUNY. We have folks who are at Morehouse. I see Dr. Marks. I saw you walk in, brother, right? We have people who are engaged in multiple important ways with our community. And it's not just from the stage space of this kind of basic research. Oh, that's cool. Coloreds do this, excuse me, right? We have to be engaged. What are black men doing? What are we doing wrong? And engaging it responsibly. And what are we doing right in making sure that we reify those strengths in ways that allow for effective duplication? Okay. I think I'm almost done. Professor Gordon, another mentor of mine, he's the last student of W.B. Du Bois before he went to Ghana. He's an 87-year-old brother who's up at emeritus professor of Yale and emeritus professor of Columbia University. And I always like to say that because he's a big deal that not a lot of people know about. Professor Gordon says, thus the picture of black males that dominates popular media as well as the conceptualization that is generally advanced in the scholarly press is a picture of pathology bordering on hopelessness, sometimes found even among those whose motivations appear to be humane and sympathetic. So what that simply means is that even those of us in this room who think that we are advancing agendas that are affirming, we have to check ourselves and make sure that we're not following into just traditional post-positivist designs of what's good for black folk and what's bad for black folk. Are we being innovative? We've got to ask ourselves those questions, right? We know that black males are a group within a group, right? Marginalized people oftentimes considered. Edward Said calls it a subaltern group, and Edmund T. Gordon, who's at University of Texas, Austin, also talks about black males and their unique specialized status and development. We'll talk about that today. We'll talk about black males beyond pathology, obviously, right? We can't be at Morehouse and dwell in pathology, and we're going to be solution-oriented. Again, experience is oftentimes mistaken for identity, and how can we better explain black males? Simply by complicating black males. It's rarely done. To do this allows us to fill pronounced gaps within society that need to be filled. It allows for us and affords us the opportunity to be innovative in terms of methodology, and we are able to be existentialists, right? Not in the sense of, a traditional Camus, well, what's going on, but being engaged. We've got to be engaged, right? We've got to be engaged. I can't say that enough. Not from outside to be analyzed. We've got to be in the mix. Thinkers are always involved. We've got a commitment and responsibility, which I said earlier, and we've got to know that the real experience is never fully comprehended by reason. Now, that almost seems crazy to say, right? But there's more than just reason that abounds. In terms of how we look at things from different lenses, through different lenses, reason is important. But there are also other things that are important as well. And certainly, as Father Griffin stares at me, we know the spirit is involved also. Okay, affirmative development, we got that. We want to focus on that. Okay, so lastly, we're going to look at multiple lenses. We're going to do this today very practically through a psychological lens, at least, a sociological lens, lens of sexuality. We're going to look through a lens of religion, media, an anthropologic lens, and whatever else these genius minds decide that we need to focus on, or the lenses through which we need to focus today. What we're going to do here, we're very comfortable with one another, okay, is that we're going to challenge one another, we're going to check one another, and we're going to charge one another, okay? Challenge, check, and charge. I thought that sounded cool when I was writing it up, right? All of us on this panel do not agree, trust, right? And we're actually all Morehouse brothers. This is the last time I'm going to say this. Some of them are old big brothers, like Reverend Griffin, but we're all brothers. And so the responsibility for us is to push one another into spaces that might feel uncomfortable, like when LaRue was talking to Bill O'Reilly, you know, a couple of years ago. Push them in spaces that are uncomfortable, but having them stand on it like a rock and represent and say, no, this is the perspective I come from. This is what's important. And this is how we need to responsibly think about black males. Okay? So as a moderator, largely what I hope to do is just sit here and listen to these genius minds go about their business. But what I will do, if I don't understand something or I think something sounds crazy, I'm going to say that. Okay? I'm going to say that. What I will do now is I think that I'll probably bring up our first presenter, who is Father Horace Griffin. But I do want to just kind of run down the line a little bit about who all these folks are. I'm not going to go into their bio, but tell you a little something that I know about them. And then you can read the bios in the programs that are in front of you. And for those who are streaming, the bios are available online as well. Horace Griffin, I just met, but like I said, he's my big brother, and we vibe something terrific, right? He's an ordained Episcopal minister. He's out in Berkeley teaching at Pacific Union? Pacific School. Thank you. All right. So there's that. So he's got to check me, right? Push me back. I need help, right? The thing that we are going to get from Father Griffin is an authentic, engaged, honest conversation. And I'll let him introduce the topic himself. He's a good guy. Hold on, I'm going to hit the other guys first. Sorry. LaRue is one of these youngsters. You graduated in 2000? Yeah, he's one of these cats you want to, kind of compartmentalize as being a youngster, but then he gets to talking and it's like, oh man, shoot, I got to get right on my game. LaRue and I met each other at a think tank through Michigan, right? About 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 months ago. Have common friends, so we know that he's good people and all that kind of stuff. But the thing about LaRue and I that I really respect from jump is we don't agree on everything, right? LaRue's going to help us at some point. I'm not sure if it's going to be in his conversation directly, but at some point, whether it's through question and answer, is we're going to talk about this dress code stuff. You heard the president say that I'm smartly attired in my blazer, man. So what are you trying to say, right? so he's going to say something, right? So we'll talk to LaRue. And then Mike Strambler and I go way back. It's amazing to think about years, right? We go back like 15 years? That's crazy. I hear my wife say 20, but that's because she went to school with him in high school. That doesn't count for me. But I remember Mike Strambler being, there was a guy who was on campus at Morehouse College. I graduated Morehouse also, who was like a big brother to me. Darnell Emir Muff Barnes, right? Muff took care of me from pre-college programs through my graduation, essentially. And there were 2 guys that he looked after that were coming from his high school, and it was Brahim and Mike, right? And so I remember these guys coming through for a college visit and them going through Muff's dorm room on the first floor in Graves Hall, and I remember, these kids, I'm gonna treat these kids like Muff treated me. Well, Mike far surpassed me when he got into those psychology classes and whatnot, and is at Yale University now, and is a brilliant, engaged brother, and has always just been a really even, good person. The thing that I want to leave you with, and I know I'm probably driving it to the ground, is that these are committed young scholars who are thinking about how to advance the condition of black men in positive, innovative ways. So I thank them all for being here today, and I want to invite Father Griffin up at this time. All right? Thanks so much.